Well, good morning, everyone. Welcome to Teching into Rehab. Can you believe that people are actually getting divorces and they are going into rehab for a month at a time because they can't get control of their cell phone addiction? That's pretty scary. So, in this episode, this live replay of a stream, we're going to talk about teching into rehab and go through this and see if we can discover ways to make sure that this never happens to you, never happens to me, because it's always a threat, right? To be teched into rehab. Cell phone, smartphone addiction is real. It's a real problem. If you're joining us live, hit the thumbs up. Let me know the connection is working well. If you can hear me and where you are in the world, what you're doing, what you're thinking. Do you have cell phone problems? Do you have smartphone addiction? Is this something that you're struggling with? Would you like to know a little bit more about how you could avoid teching into rehab? Because it's actually pretty simple, I think. But dopamine is a strong, strong drug. And we know that we are getting hooked on the dopamine spikes from the algorithms that are understanding what we like and giving more of us on it. So we're just like that rat pressing the button. Dopamine, 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 dopamine. And it's pretty strange. But there's ways to get out of it. And we can manage and so forth. So if you're joining us now, hit the thumbs up. Let me know where you are in the world, what you're doing, what you're thinking. The chat should be working. Love to hear from you. That's what makes these sessions more exciting and more interesting. And I'd love to know if you're actually interested in memory improvement news, because I think we can learn a lot from it, and it's really, really important. And by the way, if you're watching the replay and you're not subscribed to this channel, hit thumbs up, get subscribed. We talk about memory improvement. We talk about memory palaces. Sandra's here from Northern California. The picture's a mirror image again. I don't know why they changed that. That sounds like one of those changes where you think that there are less than intelligent people in updates on the devices on the other end. In any case, we're going to have to be grateful for what we've got. It says Teching into Rehab. And Teching into Rehab is by Natasha Bita. And it says smartphone addictions are driving couples to divorce and forcing worn-out workers into rehab as switched-on Australians spend nearly 5 hours a day surfing the internet. 5 hours a day. 5 hours a day on the internet. That's I don't even know if that's I don't know how we can gauge that, right? Because if you have a job, are you surfing the internet? You know, if you have to use the internet, are you surfing it? What does surfing mean? We already have a problem when we think of this term surfing. So 5 hours a day surfing the internet, that does sound pretty bad, because that sounds like just wandering around meandering, that's not even a word, but meandering uselessly. And here's one of the problems there, right? Because surfing is not wandering around and meandering uselessly. Surfing is an actual sport, one that takes skill, one that has talent. So we're calling this surfing for 5 hours, right? Yeah, I know we get what we mean, but some of what we get when we use words loosely or metaphorically and so forth is not the real picture of what's really going on. So one of the first tips that I have for you when you're looking at news about the internet or whatever you're looking at news for, what's the language that's being used here? And is it specific enough to be meaningful, right? Like if you're gonna take Tony Buzan's new book, for example, Mind Mapping Mastery, finally arrived, and you were to mind map what surfing on the internet means, you'd come up with this wide range of wonderful potential meanings that are not indicated in this article at all, right? And that's a problem. That's a real problem of how we use language and how we make problems that don't even really exist, right? Because of how we use the language. So first tip, when you're reading the scare stuff here, I don't know who changed to the mirror image, but they maybe were surfing the internet while they were doing it and made a bad decision there. But we got to get clear about what that means, right? So this is 5 hours. What's happening? What does surfing mean? And who's doing it? How are they doing it? Is it at work? Is it impeding with their work? And so on. We got to get more specific. And you need to get more specific, because you want to be like Batman in your memory. You want to have all the utility tools in your belt. And you better believe that Batman beats the Joker because he's specific about the right tools for the right job. And one of the things that's really important when you're reading news stories like this is to have the right critical thinking tools to get the job done, to figure out what the real problem is and how you can solve it. And so when you catch something like surfing the internet, ask, what the heck does that mean? And then, if you need to, mind map, read this book. It'll help you mind map better. and then you'll actually start to have better critical thinking skills. You'll school yourself in critical thinking skills, and boom, better decisions will be made about what you're reading, and you'll have greater thoughts, greater depth of meaning in life. Angie's here. Hi, Angie. Great to see your name after all this time. Angie from Malaysia. Great to hear from you about the problematic issues in the world today. Good things to think about. Thank you, Angie. Glad that you are on board with this and agree. And again, good to see you after all this time. Look, reading the newspaper can be a nightmare, and it can really be discouraging, but one of the ways that we really open up the perspectives and actually make it more valuable is to sort of tackle this and say, what's happening here? Like, what is the language? So that's one tool, one very, very important tool. So it says, amid new global research showing smartphones can be as addictive as opium, experts have revealed workers burnt out by obsessively using their phones are spending up to a month in rehab. Okay, so here we have another thing, like amid new global research. Great, I know it's just a newspaper, right? But I lived in Germany, and when you read the newspaper in German, they don't do that quite the same. They're much more likely to like say, amid new global research that's actually taking place in this specific laboratory, which is not global at all, it's actually somewhere, or researchers in these countries, and list them, not global. Global, that makes it sound like it's just every city in the world has these researchers doing this. Let's get more specific. That would make this much better. Australian Medical Association President Tony Buzan. What a great name, actually. Tony Buzan. Maybe he's a baritone. Julie's here. Hey, Julie, good to see you from California. We're talking about the shock toll of raging smartphone addictions, teching innocent, or are they, surfers of the internet into rehab. Okay, so Australian Medical Association President Tony Buzan. How are we going to remember that name? Like baritone comes to my mind instantly, right? Might make a bit of confusion there later. We don't want to call him Tony Baritone later. It's baritone. So maybe there's a baritone opera singer on a bar who has Tone Loc there, and they're in a fist fight. So baritone. Now, which bar? I'm thinking of one where well, I won't get into this story, but anyway, there is one in particular. And I'm thinking, now I got to think of, Tone Loc. Well, why would I choose Tone Loc? See, this is the thing, when you're making up these images on the fly, you don't always choose the best possible one, so you think about it. Tone Loc isn't Tony, but maybe Tony Parsons, who used to host the news in Canada, and maybe that would be better. Maybe some other Tony. And then Tone Loc is Tone. So now it's like Tony on a bar singing baritone with Tone Loc. That's going to make it much better. So Australian Medical Association President Tony Buzan. Now we want to remember that he's the Australian Medical Association President, right? So that's AMA, which helps chunk it down, or whatever crazy word that you could use from the memory science. Australian Medical Association acronym. An acronym, we're going to acronym chunk here. So AMA. Well, if you were on the webinar yesterday, then you would have learned about the alphabet list. So we could use our alphabet list. Batman, sadly, is not in AMA, but some more specific things are. In any case, we can remember his name, and we can remember that he's from the Australian Medical Association using memory techniques, and we make it real magnetic, right? Make those images magnetic as possible. Tony Buzan warned that constant connectivity is making people mentally ill and physically sick. This we can agree on. We can agree on this. Page 8 and 9. Sick and unwell, that's for sure. But to the point that you need to go to rehab. Whoa, 2-page spread. That's a lot to go through, but this is important. This is important. If you agree that this is important, hit that thumbs up. Let me know where you are in the world. Julie, how have you been doing recently? Angie and Sandra, let me know a little bit more what's going on, how your memory is going, and I'll do a little bit of memory exercise here as well. Sounds like it's a really good time for California. But calls to leave phone alone. I guess it's mirror there. Sorry that you're, Julie says this is important. I agree. Again, if you're joining us, hit the thumbs up. Let me know where you are in the world. If you're not subscribed to this channel, hit subscribe as well. There's a little bell icon there. We're having one of the things that's so fascinating here is that YouTube's making changes and stuff. People aren't being notified of these live streams. I'm working on a fix. And Sandra agrees that it's important. Thanks. The more interactive you make this, the better. Thumbs up. Let me know where you are in the world. If you're joining us, if you're watching the replay, thumbs up rule applies. Let me know you're engaged, that it's important to you. If it's not, you can also let me know that it's important to you, not important to you as well. But then let me know what it is. Those thumbs down Nazis, they're really not actually explaining their thumbs down, so their thumbs downs don't really count. I get like one every once in a while, but I always wonder, why wouldn't you leave a comment? Maybe it's because you have some surfing issues. I don't know. If you missed my little joke about surfing there, but important distinction and clarification around why surfing the web is a meaningless metaphor, why we need more specificity. You might want to watch this from the beginning. But let's look into this here. No brainer. The damage your digital device could be causing. Right. Docs warn that we're surfing a dangerous wave on our devices. See, okay, so the metaphor is there, it's cool, but it's not that meaningful still. We don't want to think about that. Put those addictions on hold. Smartphones can be as addictive as opium, new research shows. New research? Really? I don't think it's that new. Actually, as addictive as opium. Sandra asks, I missed yesterday. Is that podcast available? Sandra, thank you for asking. The material that you're referring to, which was a webinar about preserving your memory while using the computer, remembering passwords, having a mnemonic calendar, that was not a podcast, but a live webinar. And live webinars are now going to potentially still make them free in the future, but there's no more replays of them. YouTube stuff, replays, no problem. But with the private webinars that I create, no more replays. And what we're doing, and thank you for asking, is we're going to edit what we recorded yesterday so that the audio is clean and nice, and the MP3 will be available. And then I'm going to re-record the actual slideshows. Actually, maybe we'll just make an edit of the video as well, but we're going to re-record the slideshow so it's nice and clean. So what we did in a webinar, interrupting, answering questions and so forth, is not the experience that you have, but you have all the nice slides just with direct teaching, and you'll be able to download the actual slides themselves. This will all be up there in the mastermind next week, and then an MP3. So if you just want to listen, and then yeah, I think with a nice edit of the actual video of the webinar, that would be nice as well. So you have options, right? Like if you want to have the interactivity feel and so forth, you can. But nonetheless, the actual material that we covered is going to have a second version, nice, clear, crisp, direct teaching of the material. And then if you want the live experience, you can have it, listen to the audio and so forth, and have the slides to go through. Because one of the things that people said yesterday was like, oh, go back to this slide, or they wanted to write down and copy all the stuff that was there. Of course, copying the stuff that was there isn't actually going to help you. You need to learn the methods and the principles behind it. But it does help to have some reference material to look at. So that's what we're going to do. So I'm sorry if you missed the live, but basically, one of the reasons for doing this is because we find that people are getting better results when you have actual show up and learn sessions, and that's part of the problem, and why that I think that stories like this are so important, is that we're seeing a massive dumbing down of culture. We're seeing a massive dumbing down of people being able to process information, and that's because free has become poison. Free has become very, very disastrous. It doesn't mean free doesn't have value or anything like that. Free has its place, but by just here's some more free stuff, people have actually forgot to engage with it. So I've come up with a new principle. I didn't make a card for it, but I better, because it's really important. And I've been trying out different versions of this principle. But if you did want yesterday's material, go to magneticmemorymethod.com/WR, and you can register for the masterclass and the mastermind in a very special offer, and it will give you this material, although as of right now it's not there, but it'll be there in a couple of days, and it's going to be world class, like everything else in the masterclass and the mastermind, for you to study. But this problem of free, a lot of people, they say, Anthony, your trainings are so great, they're all meat. And then other people say, where's the meat? And I can't figure it out, but I'm working on figuring it out so that everybody gets what's really important, which is no metaphor at all. Actual substantial training that if you take action on it will get you results. So meat, meaningless edutainment, absurdly thriving. Meaningless edutainment, absurdly thriving. How do you like that? I'm sick of the meat. I'm sick of the meat. Meaningless edutainment, absurdly thriving on the internet. When I go to a website, and we're doing a lot of research right now on websites and figuring out what Google is sending traffic to and why. And I'm looking at this stuff and it's like, it's because it's written for Google, not for humans who actually want to learn something. So a lot of the work that I've been doing is getting less traffic than it could be if I would write for computers instead of humans. Isn't that sick that the world has gotten to the point that you're writing for computers instead of humans? Christian Book, who is a Canadian, also here in Australia, he wrote something years ago. You can find it on UbuWeb, which is called, it's about robo-poetics. And he predicted this, that poetry in the future will be written for robots because they're the only things that read what people write online, right? This is absolutely sick. So we need to fix it somehow. We need to write for humans. We need to reach their needs. But so much traffic is being sent by Google to websites that are written for algorithms, not for human needs. It's disgusting. So MEAT, mediocre edutainment, absurdly thriving. We're at war, people, and we need to be, because it's a no-brainer that the damage your digital device could be causing is because we're surfing a dangerous wave on our devices. Let's check in with our visitors here, our attendees. If you're just joining us, hit the thumbs up. Let me know where you are in the world. And yeah, so Sandra, if you wanted to get that material, go to magneticmemorymethod.com/WR, or at least give the offer a good look if you're not already in there. Angie says, hands down to the thumbs down Nazis. Yeah, right, exactly. And thumbs up to the people who are resisting the meat and helping us study memory techniques, implement memory techniques instead of algorithms. Absolutely disgusting, the state of the internet these days. Sandra says, thank you, really wanted to see it, but the notification didn't come. I'm so glad you'll make it available. Yeah, we're having all these issues. Google changed things, Facebook changed things, Amazon changes things. It's just weird, right? They're so against human communication. Character counts. You can't write full sentences anymore and be meaningful. Well, Memory Improvement has a lot of words in it, right? Memory Palace has letters. Memory Palace has a lot of letters in it. Mnemonics. Oh my God, we might have to learn a word that is pronounced differently than it's spelled. Come on, people. Let's preserve human knowledge for as long as we can. Let's get together. If it's important to you, hit the thumbs up. Start engaging in the discussion. And Julie says, I'm sick of the meat too. Meaningless edutainment, absurdly thriving. How are we going to get over this? We're going to get together. We got to make something happen. We got to change the world ourselves together, and we have to try to use the technology differently, because the technology is just using our dopamine spikes and saying, hey, these guys get addicted. Let's figure out how to show them more of the meat, the meaningless edutainment, absurdly thriving. Well, we're responsible, I'm afraid, and we're the ones who are going to have to get ourselves out of this rut. All right, so how are we going to do it? We're going to read the news. As addictive as opium smartphones are, we see, as new research shows. A study by San Francisco State University academics Eric Pieper and Richard Harvey has identified problems. Tony Bartone was the guy from the other page, I think, if I remember correctly. Eric Pieper and Richard Harvey has identified problems ranging from phoneliness to a slouching posture now known as eye neck. Phoneliness. Feeling phonely? Are you phonely tonight? Do you have eye neck tonight? We can make songs out of this. Writing in neuroregulation, the academics found that heavy phone users experience significantly higher levels of loneliness, depression, and anxiety. Whoa. The behavioral addiction of smartphone use begins forming neurological connections in the brain in ways similar to how opioid, is that spelled right? I thought it was opioid. Opioid addiction is experienced by people taking OxyContin for pain relief. Gradually, the study concludes. Being plugged in and connected limits the time for reflection and regeneration. This is exactly right. One of the things that I talk about a lot is digital fasting. Why? For better connection with the actual things you're consuming and more reflection, right? It's very, very important. It's why I walk around without listening to music. I mean, sometimes I will. If you see me on the street and I got headphones on, don't be like, you're a liar, all that stuff. No. Sometimes I do listen to music while I'm walking, but I generally, at least once a day, have a complete digital fast, and I just go out walking. And I might have my camera with me, which is kind of like cheating, but I'm making stuff for you. I don't know if you saw yesterday, or it was the day before yesterday, I released a Memory Palace training exercise with Olivia. She was 10 years old in grade 5 in the UK. And we just, I was digital fasting as such, but I had my camera with me, and we just grabbed the opportunity to do some on-the-street memory training with her. It was a lot of fun, getting rid of the meat, and so we can focus on substantial education that helps people. And I think she was genuinely helped. I don't know what she'll do with that exercise that I gave her, but it was also for you as someone who watches these videos. So if you missed it, it's here on the YouTube channel. Hit that thumbs up, leave a comment, because that's how we're going to tell the algorithms what's important to us. So the more you're engaged actively in these things, the more we're going to be able to resist the meat. And I'm glad that you all are sick of it as well. So, this is interesting, right? Being plugged in and connected limits the time for reflection and regeneration. Being ongoing stress or stimulation without time to regenerate leads to illness and neural death. Neural death. The phenomenon can be seen in the development of rat brains. So, I don't get this. Let's just pause here. We can see it in the development of rat brains. So, are they showing rat brains how to surf on the internet? Is that what they're talking about? I'm kind of confused. And it would be nice if we could click on the newspaper to find this research. Oh, my heavens! We might actually have to type. What we learn here into the Google and find something. Oh my God, that's effort. Too hard. No. We had Josie Thompson on the show the other day, and we did a live stream with her. And what was it that she said? It was Sir John Whitmore, right? And oh my heavens, I had to go to Google and look him up manually because there was nothing to click, because she said it to me in person on our live stream. Isn't that sad that the world has come that way, that it's such effort to type things in and there's nothing to click? That's what I got from the Magnetic Memory Method print newsletters. People said, yeah, but I didn't know where to click on your print newsletter. Yikes. Okay, so anyway, Emerson's here. Oh, hello, Emerson. She said can't listen to the replay. Excellent. Yeah, for those of you who are here joining us now, the replay that we did of the private webinar, there's no replay. It's actually now being formally put into the Magnetic Memory Method Masterclass and Mastermind for Mastermind people. And so that's at magneticmerrymethod.com/WR. And no meat, meaningless edutainment, absurdly thriving is banned from the masterclass. We just get into real training that helps. If you're joining us, hit thumbs up. Let me know in the chat below what you're doing, what you're thinking, where you're from. But rats, yeah, I think that's kind of weird. I don't know how they're testing rats for what humans do online, but anyway, I'm gonna be typing into Google to figure it out. Okay, so neural death. Nielsen data shows that Australians aged 18 to 50 are spending an average of 4.5 hours a day surfing the internet. Well, on page 1 they said it was 5. Come on, I can remember what you wrote on page 1. Why can't you? Now it's 4.5 hours a day. Australians typically spend 2 hours a day surfing on a smartphone, 96 minutes a day on a tablet, and an hour a day on a desktop computer. Roy Morgan research reveals that women aged 14 to 24 are spending nearly 2 hours a day using social media, including Facebook, Instagram, and Snapchat. Australian women average an hour a day on social media compared to 41 minutes for men. Wow, okay, so we got a lot of little demographic and psychographic details there, but I'm not sure what the full use of that is about. But if it's leading to this kind of problem with your neck, that's pretty sad. That's tragic. And here we have, I know that the mirror is reversed. I hope that iPhone, Apple people will do a better update, because that sucks. But we don't want our necks to be like that. Can you imagine humans 1,000 years in the future? We were just born with these things in our hands, and that's what we do, walking around. Oh, hey, Dave. Hey, Bill. Hey, Judy. Hey, Jennifer. Yeah, that would be sad. Connect with people. Look them in the eyes. Digital detox. I prefer digital fasting, but digital detox is where digital fasting leads to. Ban iPhones from the bedroom. Never check emails before sleep. Schedule time to look at email and tell your colleagues you will only respond during certain hours. Leave the phones at home. Leave the phone at home on date nights. Oh yeah, that's good. Go on a date without the phone. I do that, and it's really great. Meal times should be phone free. Set social media boundaries. Is it okay to friend an old flame? Ooh. Oh, don't discuss delicate issues by text message. That's a good policy as well. Here's another one. I'm reading this very special book. I Know the Mirror's Image. It says The Fire of Self-Knowledge. Commentaries on Shankaracharya's Atmabodha by James Schwartz. It'll help make sure that you don't really even have any delicate issues to discuss at all. No, things come up here and there, but wouldn't it be great if we could get rid of that in our lives? All right, so smartphone addictions are driving couples to divorce and forcing worn-out workers into rehab as switched-on Australians spend nearly 5 hours a day surfing the net. So it's 4.5 over here, 5 over here. Digital dalliances are wrecking relationships as partners watch online pornography, cheat on dating websites, and flirt on social media. Workaholics are now checking into addiction clinics for a digital detox to kick the habit of constantly checking office email. Again, we have Australian Medical Association President Tony Buzan warned that constant connectivity was making people mentally ill and physically sick. There's an expectation that you are available 24/7, and that can impact on family and relationships, he told the Courier Mail. We're multitasking more than ever before, but there's got to be a limit on how much we stretch that rubber band before it snaps. Mental illness issues like stress and anxiety are more commonplace. We need to try to set some boundaries. Drug, alcohol, and gambling rehabilitation clinic, the Buttery Private, inland from Byron Bay, is offering treatment for internet addiction. The Buttery Private. What an interesting name for a clinic. That's both easy and hard to memorize, to think of a mnemonic for. The Buttery Private. Okay, so there's a place. Clinical director Jenny McGee said some clients were checking in for a month to recover from work stress caused by online work overload. So this is what I don't like. Some clients. Give us a number. Is this just a purchase bait newspaper headline? Or is it an epidemic? Some people. Let's get more specific here. This is a problem. Some people. That could mean 2 people have checked in there. Some clients. Okay, they have burnout caused by checking emails and taking phone calls compulsively, she said, adding that addictions to online pornography and shopping were causing rifts in relationships. Ms. McGee said social media, gaming, and pornography could activate the pleasure neural pathways of the brain in the same way as drugs or gambling. They're a little bit cautious around the language here, I think. I think that we have enough from gambling addiction research to know that those gambling machines and online games and some of the social media components are pretty much the same. They're using a lot of the same technology, I believe, but I'm not a medical professional or a gambling professional. But I have been watching a lot of Norm Macdonald videos lately in my own little world of online addiction, and he talks about a scheduled time, of course, not random YouTube watching of Norm Macdonald. But he talks a lot about his gambling addiction. And it's very, very interesting how that addiction to gambling bleeds over from digital machines to actual interaction with non-digital versions. Julie says, Norm Macdonald is fantastic. Everybody hit thumbs up if you agree. Juan's here, 4th year medicine student. Thanks for saying hello, Juan. If you're joining us, hit the thumbs up. Say hello in the chat. And Norm Macdonald is an interesting guy. Being a Canadian myself, I think that I often like to listen to him just to hear some Canadian lingo and Canadian pronunciation and Canadian brotherhood, fellowship. And just someone, too, who's like really speaking straight from the heart in very real and substantial ways. Right or wrong, who knows? But the great philosopher Michel Foucault had an article called What is an Author? And he said, it's not always about right or wrong. It's about opening new discourses, opening the potential to think about things that you didn't think of before because someone was able to open the discourse. So I think he's one of those discourse openers, obviously sometimes very extreme, obviously sometimes too far, obviously sometimes offensive. But we need to have offense sometimes in life so that we don't get weak, right? The meat is weakening us. Meaningless edutainment, absurdly thriving. It's weakening us. We need to have a thick skin. We need to hear things that don't always gel with our system. And that's what comedy is so great for. The idea that comedians are no longer going to campuses in North America, specifically in the US, because it's become too sensitive to things that might be offensive, that's very strange. Very strange. So Juan says he's a fourth-year medicine student. Hello. Hello, and thank you for being a doctor. We need better doctors. We need doctors who use memory techniques in order to be better professionals with memory techniques, and that's really, really important. Emerson says, I'm over watching YouTube videos unless it is enriching my life. Excellent policy. That's the SIP principle, right? Study memory techniques, implement memory techniques, practice memory techniques with information that improves your life, or study YouTube videos that improve your life and implement good ideas from the fact that you're choosing and scheduling your time for watching YouTube. And I know I put a little bit of a monkey wrench in there by not scheduling my live streams, but in any case, you catch me, you catch me. And that's, I think, also has its place. These spontaneous things have their place, but so do scheduled things. But I schedule my time. There's very specific times that I go through what I want to do on YouTube. And it's never just about mindlessly consuming things. I'm always researching and thinking, hey, how does this help people with memory? And maybe there's a bad element there. Maybe there's a bit of workaholism there. I think about it. But at the same time, at least it's scheduled, and at least I do my digital fasting, digital detoxing, and just get some space from it for reflection, for regeneration. And I mean, I really struggle with these issues myself, but fortunately, I've had boundaries much earlier in my life, and that helped me when this wave of surfing the internet got stronger and stronger and stronger. And being prepared for that, I think, gave me a little bit of an advantage that maybe younger generations don't have, or maybe younger generations, some research I've read says that younger generations are dealing with it better. I'm not sure, but we'll see how it pans out. Sandra says, are these articles not reminiscent of the warnings we read about television in the vast American wasteland several decades ago? As a teacher for over 30 years, I saw a decline in verbal skills. Sandra, that's a great point. If you saw the talk with Josie from the other day, I raised that. I asked that question myself. I was like, this hysteria over smartphones, isn't it like that old picture we see of all the people on the train reading the newspaper and how there were these articles about that being a hysterical change and it's ruining everybody's brain and so forth. And she said, yeah, but Anthony, how many tabs does a newspaper have? How many multiple windows does a newspaper have? How many, things do you click or that pop up on the screen does a newspaper have? And she's absolutely right. But Sandra, I'm so grateful that you raised that issue, because it raises the issue of technological determinism. And one great book that I read when I was in graduate school was The Technological Society by Jacques Ellul, I think his name was. And I think it was called The Technological Society. Anyway, I highly recommend it, even though it's really, really dated, because the Unabomber read that book, and he partly based his Unabomber manifesto on what he read there. And The Matrix, actually, the screenplay of The Matrix is largely based on the Unabomber manifesto. At least that's my speculation. I really think that it is. Like, I watched The Matrix and I was like, holy cow, this is the screenplay of the Unabomber manifesto. And the scary thing about it is that what Kaczynski is railing against, he's very, very wrong and stupid and criminal and deserves every punishment for what he did. But his worries are not wrong, because. And you read this in Jacques Ellul in the Technological Society, because what Ellul says there, and this is where technological determinism is both a very powerful issue to think about and a problem, is he says that the concern that we shouldn't have is that technology is going to ruin us or whatever. It's when is it going to change from technology being tools that we use to us being tools of technology? And so he creates this kind of idea of humans taking one tool to repair another, right? And so imagine you've got two machines, and one machine breaks down, and the human doesn't know how to fix machine A. So machine A says, you have to go over to machine B and bring machine B over to me, because machine B is the thing that is needed to fix machine A. So now what is the human? The human is the slave to the machine, right? And we see this very, very much in today's world. Like, I have some problems on my website. So what do? Well, I have to hire some guy who actually knows a lot about the machines. But really what he's doing is he's bringing machine B over to machine A so that machine B can fix machine A. And he's a go-between. Now, is that a slave? Well, no, of course not. It's not there yet, but totally bonkers. And he then has to really check himself into a hospital because he's got these paranoid delusions about it all. And he writes the Unabomber Manifesto and so forth. But if you haven't read the actual manifesto itself, it really does read like the screenplay for The Matrix. And there's a book, a novel, I think it's called The Monkey Wrench Gang. Highly recommend reading that as well, because The Matrix, I think, is deeply influenced by that. Of course, we always think about the allegory of the cave as being the main influence on The Matrix, but it's a lot more deeper than that. Incidentally, these are the things I used to teach a lot about and talk a lot about in my film courses. Back when I was a film professor, because you don't just watch The Matrix. You think, how did The Matrix come to be? And you kind of build the genealogy of how the movie like The Matrix could come to be. And then you say, what else came out that year? And so people who watch The Matrix haven't really seen The Matrix, I would argue, until they also see Existenz. E capital X, I-S-T-E-N capital Z, Existenz. And that's by a Canadian director called David Cronenberg. And there's arguments to be made that The Matrix is actually deeply influenced by Cronenberg's career previous to that. And so it's just like really odd. Like, and what I mean is that scene where Neo is on the bed and they are on the table and they put the sensor into his belly button, and then later they're like, and they get the sensor and it goes into that thing. Well, that's very much a Cronenberg scene. Like, they couldn't have made that if they hadn't seen Cronenberg. It's like so Cronenberg. And then oddly enough, Cronenberg makes Existenz in the same year that The Matrix comes out. Like, it was almost the same month that they came out in Canada. And I was just thinking, oh my goodness, what a weird coincidence. And what we see is the culture is trying to teach us about what we're afraid of and give us solutions about how to live better in the world. Shakespeare taught us a lot about how to live better in the world, you know? So there's much to be learned from society. In any case, that's an answer in a roundabout way to Sandra's question about the decline in verbal skills and our hysteria about cell phone technology, because people used to say back in the day when cars came out, more women were getting pregnant. Why? Because now young men could offer their dates to go to secluded areas and pia pia pia, so to speak, if I could use some Chinese there. And the thing is that technology determining human behavior? Or is it the truth that humans used to go and walk into the woods so they could be privately together to perpetuate the birth of the species? It's probably a little bit of both. Maybe you would have seen a bit of an up curve in teenage pregnancies or whatnot. I don't know. But it's interesting, right? And it's really, really important that we don't get hysterical about this, because it leads to Unabombers, right? And we had the same hysteria when cell phones appeared. I remember when cell phones came out, both in high school. There was this teacher who had one of those big 50-pound cell phones. He must have been the richest teacher in all of Canada, because he was walking around with a cell phone all the time. But I remember when that came out and it was on the news that people were starting to do this, and oh my God, everything's going to go downhill. And then I remember in university, my first Nokia cell phone, and just absolutely hating it. I hated the idea that my girlfriend could call me anytime, and it was like, oh. But whatever, that's the way it was. And I knew the dangers because I'd read McLuhan, I'd read Innes, I'd read Wyndham Lewis. I knew all these people. I was taking these courses. And Global Village, do you want the Global Village in your pocket when you're walking down the street? You're thinking deep thoughts, you're thinking philosophy, you're going over your stuff, and then ring, ring, ring. Oh, now you're thinking about pizza dates, right? That's not the path to knowledge, I don't think. Or maybe it is. Like, I still seem to have managed to have gotten my PhD anyway, despite all the odds. So great question, Sandra. I don't necessarily know the answer, but part of the answer is to read deeply what's available throughout history and then think, yeah, but there is technological determinism as well. We see it right now. The whole Facebook scandals going on right now are very, very much a part of people's behaviors being determined, maybe not by the technology as such, but the algorithms that spike the opium. So it's not technological determinism, it's what you might call the assemblage of humans and machines. Now, assemblage is a word that a French philosophers used very, very well in a book called A Thousand Plateaus by Gilles Deleuze and Felix Guattari. Heavy duty stuff, and lots to disagree with in those books. Perhaps things so egregious and worth disagreeing that you might not want to read it, but nonetheless, I think we should never say don't read this or that. We should always say check it out for yourself, form your own opinions. But these are powerful ideas, assemblage, because we do assemblage with technology. When you ride a bike, you are assembling with the bike. When you go to the cinema, you sit in a theater, you're assembling not only with the theater seat, you're assembling with the screen, and you're assembling with the projector behind you, and you're becoming a biological unit in which the rays of light and the photons and the electrons and so forth are entering your eyes, not just randomly, but precisely because you're sat there, precisely because the screen is placed where it's placed, precisely because the projector is placed where it's placed, and precisely because 24 frames per second are rolling out. And then you have the sound element. You're completely assembled at every possible level in that moment, even if you're not paying attention. The very fact that you could not pay attention in that situation, in that assemblage, doesn't mean that it's not affecting you at multiple neurochemical but physical levels, right? It's amazing. So you're assembled with it. So it's not technological determinism. It's like more like biotechnological determinism, in the same way that just you can show up at a meeting with some people and be deeply influenced by what they say to you. Could be a birthday party where you get a recommendation to go to Disneyland, right? You never would have went if that topic hadn't have come up and someone hadn't have said, oh, amazing, it's just the greatest place. You got to go and see the Matterhorn and Space Mountain and all that jazz. And they really, really get into your chemistry purely verbally by saying all these wonderful things. You start to create pictures in your mind. And so you're not determined by that person, but it is a social determinism that influences you at multiple levels, a lot of which are just downright neurochemical. It's amazing. And when you get into this, you're better able to protect yourself from the influence. You're better able to protect it. So Sandra, brilliant question. Thank you so much for raising it. Let's check in what else we got here. Emerson says, I know that my handwriting skills were in danger of being lost. I was taught cursive in school. I read the newspaper while my husband reads Twitter in the morning over coffee. I started doing crossword puzzles too. Great. I don't know, Emerson, if you saw my podcast on crossword puzzles. Really an interesting topic, but glad that you are thinking about cursive. One of the things that I've done to retain cursive is to continue writing, but also writing backwards. Not mirror writing, although that would be something I would like to practice as well. But it's been really powerful, and dual-handedness. So I've taught myself to write in both hands, but I also just naturally wrote in both hands. I used to do this thing when I was a professor where I just switch my hands, my chalk. I would just write in the left hand and then switch over to the other hand, and it was really wild to do that. Students would be, oh my goodness, they got used to it pretty quickly, but it was a novelty for the first couple of times. And I don't know exactly why that I have that ambidextrousness on chalkboards, but I had to train it for flat writing on paper. Anyway, something to think about, because it really helps your focus and concentration, and it's fun too, and it really just attenuates you with the moment. It brings meaning and form and content together in a real tight web. It's really powerful, so give that a try. Peggy's here. Hi Peggy, great to see you live here. We've had, I think if you're the Peggy I'm thinking of, it's great to have interacted before. Juan says, thanks to you, Anthony. I used your Memory Palace method to study for my exams and learning languages. I still use it. That's great, Juan. Thanks for letting me know. And I really appreciate it, and keep using it. I think you'll find it fantastic. Greg is here and says, hi, Anthony. You are great. Thank you, Greg. I really, really appreciate that. Greg says, I couldn't understand well if I put my language words in a particular palace per letter, i.e. a palace for just A French words, B words, and so on for A Spanish words, or so on, but all in the same place, random, or like they came into your life. That's a great question, Greg. The thing is that without the book in front of you and without you drawing your own memory palaces and so forth, it's very difficult to answer and be abstract about. But generally, it's something to discuss more specifically. But what I would just suggest is if you've read one of my books, reread it. We often try to take shortcuts and not reread material, especially training material. So that would be the first thing. Take the courses, reread them. There's videos that go through this, and get the training if that's going to make a difference for you. So magneticmarymethod.com/WR, special offer now. That the June session is going to be there next week. I know Emerson said she's excited to watch it. We're going to take a little bit of extra time to really polish it, make sure the audio is crisp and clean from the replay. So you'll get the polished version and the replay, but the replay will be slightly edited because we want to make sure that it's listenable as much as possible. And it won't be for everyone. That's why we're making the polished version. So for people who are time starved and so forth and just want not the meat, but the SIP, right? Because we don't take meat. What is meat again? Meaningless edutainment, absurdly thriving on the internet. Instead, we want to take it one sip at a time. Study memory techniques, implement memory techniques, and practice the memory techniques that improve our life, because we're focusing on information that improves our lives. So the June seminar is all about memorizing passwords, and it's all about memorizing how to manage large projects, how to find your files. We talk about using a mnemonic calendar. It's based on training in the masterclass that then enables you to create a mnemonic calendar, but then I started to take it to specific applications so you can remember the files you're working on, where to find them, and a mnemonic calendar also helps with the future, so you can see into the future. Anyway, that's at magneticmarymethod.com/WR, and limited time open there, so if you want it, grab it. Let's see. So, but anyway, good question, Greg, and just keep going back to the study materials you already have. That's one of the main sort of, it's not a failure, but it's a failing. When people, they have training that they've invested in and they don't go back to it. I remember my brother always beating me at video games. And one of the reasons why he beat me at the video games is because he was willing to go to that manual and read it again. Oh, up, down, left, right, right. And then get all the advantage. And he had the video game magazines, Video Game Monthly, Nintendo Monthly, or whatever it was called. I don't distinctly remember. I wasn't using memory techniques when I was a kid. But the difference between us and his competitive advantage is he would read those magazines a couple of times. He'd take the pictures out and put them on his wall, and he'd just be like, okay, when I get to this move in Super Mario, it's like, and then and he would just absorb it and go back to the training, He would study the techniques. He would implement the techniques, and he would practice the techniques that gave him a competitive advantage, one sip at a time. And he was always winning those games. And it didn't matter if it was on Nintendo or at the arcade. We'd go to the arcade, we'd have these socks filled with quarters, and we'd tie them to our jean belt loops, and then we'd get to the arcade and unloop them and have them fill our pockets at a bit at a time. Like, we literally would think every detail down to the nth degree. How can we get these quarters in the right part of the pockets, and so that we can just because it's like you've only got so many seconds to restart your game, so we would just be like, bam, quarter in there. We'd have the quarters lined up on the screens if it was able to have that. And we just like bang, 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 and then we're out. We got to get the sock out and refill. So we were just like these Western heroes with our guns. So we were in the game. Anyway, but he always won because he would study, implement, and practice based on going back to the training material. And he would every month, got to get Nintendo magazine for the next level thing. And then he got into Sega, and then the next thing you know is the whatever magazine that you need there. No internet at that time. But hope that helps you out, Greg. Greg says, thank you. Jaideep's here. Hey, Jaideep, great to see you. If you're just joining us, hit the thumbs up. Let me know how you're doing with phones. And we're going to carry on with this in a little bit here, but really appreciate everybody being here. Interaction. Always hit that thumbs up. It's how we help tell the algorithms that we care about this kind of education, this kind of experience, and that we're tired of the meaningless education absurdly thriving. So Julie says, I agree about revisiting previously read material as well as I thought I understood it the first time. I always pick up things I had overlooked. Let's get to that in a second. Hold on for 1 second. I'm going. So, I hope that I fixed the problem that I just had. But Yeah, that should be right. Okay, so Jaideep says I'm a bit habitual to iPhone as well. Well, that's what we're talking about today, Jaideep. If you missed well, I guess you did miss the beginning because you're just showing up now. Go back to the beginning and check it out. And one thing that would be interesting is if people wanted to help with these lives and send over an MP3, and maybe I'll ask my assistant to do it. But she's already doing so many things. And thank you again, Anna, for being on yesterday's webinar. It really helped to have you there, and I thank everybody who thanked her. And just a shout out to Anna and Ali who helped with Magnetic Memory Method, and also to Peter and Serge, because we're going for gold, and we're going to make this just the best memory training based on the true principles of what actually works. And try to reduce the impact of the meaningless edutainment absurdly thriving on the internet, so that we can preserve knowledge, preserve the tools of knowledge. And again, good time to shout out to my mentor, Tony Buzan, and his new book, Mind Map Mastery. Not a paid thing. I bought this myself, and to support his work, because that's important. And really looking forward to diving into this. Read the introduction already. Going to do a full review. If you're not subscribed, hit subscribe, hit thumbs up. Make sure you're subscribed over at magneticmemorymethod.com as well, because YouTube and all that stuff, they're making it harder and harder. They're not even sending emails, we've learned, to many people who are subscribed. What's the point of the subscribe button if they're not even going to email you when we go live, right? Crazy times. And the algorithms know if you're not opening emails, if you're not clicking buttons and all that sort of stuff, well, then they're going to send you less and less of it. So what do? Well, to avoid the hysteria that we've been talking about today, where people wind up with iPhone neck, well, what we got to do is we got to start not subscribing to things that we're not actually going to follow up on, right? Wouldn't that make sense? So when you click subscribe on something, be like all in. Be like, I'm not going to consume this as meaningless edutainment absurdly thriving on the internet. I'm going to go deep into this one thing, right? And I'm going to really master this before I subscribe to anything else. Wouldn't that make more sense, right? Then maybe we wouldn't have these problems where Google is deciding what goes into our spam folders or not, right? To protect us from our decisions. Maybe we wouldn't have GDPR laws coming in and somehow trying to protect us from our decisions, because it's our responsibility at the end of the day, not governments, not corporations, us, you and me. So let's do something better. And I'm going to speak up about it, because I'm pretty damn annoyed by the tendencies online that I see happening that are really destroying the beautiful ideals of the internet, which is access to information, inspiration, guidance to all who want to learn. It's supposed to be the information superhighway, not the information addiction center, right? Crazy. I want to catch up with these chats. I really appreciate everybody being active. Hit the thumbs up if this is meaningful and useful for you, if you haven't already. If you're joining us, post in the discussion that you're here, where you're from, what you're working on in your learning projects. Julie says, attenuation to the moment is great. Thank you, Julie. Greg continues with a thank you and says, oh, this doesn't work as well. Jaideep says he spends at least 4 hours on the phone. Wow, well, try and think about what you could do to change that. Like, before I put out advice that could be totally meaningless, what's your instinct that you could do to change that? Pushpa is here. Thank you for being here, Pushpa. How to create image of any word. Pushpa, give me an example of a word. Let's work with specifics, and then maybe we can come up with an example. Greg says, I do think there's a lack in our school system. The palace is awesome to learn, better than reading and repeating. Absolutely. You know, Greg, you raise a great point. I think there's a lack in our school system as well. Uh-oh. Sorry, Greg, I pressed the wrong button and deleted your thing. I really apologize for that. Let me see if I can fix that. I don't know what I did. But anyway, I didn't mean to delete your comment. And I hope I didn't press any other wrong button. But you know, we got to deal with these kinds of things sometimes, but I apologize. But you had a great chat and a question about it, or a comment about it being removed from, or not present enough in schools and the Memory Palace being a great technique better than rote learning. This is true. And the thing about schools is, my feeling is yes, we need to try and get this into schools more, but really, and I was talking about this recently, really we need to get the parents learning the techniques and teaching them to the kids and demonstrating them to the kids. Because we can't rely on governments and we can't rely on schools to do what we need to be doing, right? We need to take responsibility for these outcomes. If we don't take the responsibility for our young people in our lives and demonstrate to them the values, what are we thinking? So it's up to us, not to the schools. So the question of, this should be taught in schools is kind of a vacuous and empty thing at the end of the day. And there are people who go to teach in schools memory techniques, and we're very, very thankful for them. I'm not speaking against that. But I think at the end of the day, I want to speak to parents, and I want to encourage parents and enable parents to learn these techniques so that they can demonstrate them to the young people and the values behind the techniques, because there are values behind the techniques. What are those values? Well, it's that we study the techniques that make us more capable as learners. We implement them and we practice those techniques with information that improves our lives and improves the lives of those around us. It's very important. And the memory techniques help us do that. Pushpa says, I'm a BBS student. I have a problem in economic subjects. Okay, well then still, give me some specific words. Jaideep says, I'm a habitual reader and I'm reading at least four, I think you're saying you read 4 books per week. Okay, well, reading on the phone, I used to do that too. I used to use Kindle on the phone, but I found that I wasn't even understanding the information as well, so I got rid of it. So, think about what you could do alternatively. I know that physical books are not, I don't even really want physical books anymore. I got rid of over 2,000 books at one point because of moving, and it's really hard to carry them around, and it is more convenient to have a whole library on an iPhone. But I changed back, not because this isn't beautiful, which it is, and not because this isn't beautiful, which it is, but I changed back because of quality of retention, quality of understanding, and it's just, who cares how many books you can carry around in one little device if you can't even understand it properly and you're having cell phone addiction problems? Who cares? You got to go for the higher principles in life, and sometimes you got to go for the inconvenience. And here's the cool thing, right? It's like, maybe I won't keep this forever, but it can become something as an object that some other person may be able to stumble across, and it will change their life. Nobody's ever going to stumble across my cell phone unless that it's stolen or lost. And they're not going to be able to unlock it to find the wonderful treasure of material inside. But this might be available for sale in a used bookstore one day. Or it might be in a library that I've donated it to one day. Or it might be given to a friend one day, right? That's never going to happen with Kindle. It's not going to happen. So consider those things, if you will. I think that's important. Juan says, I had some problems when memorizing huge amounts of information from my medicine textbooks. I had to imagine many memory palaces and I ran out of places. No one needs to run out of places. Just make more memory palaces. It's really simple to do. If you struggle at the beginning, then just keep going, right? Because you'll unlock the skill by practicing the skill. Batman, he's got a utility belt. He doesn't say, well, I ran out of smoke bombs. No, he goes at you. Not only does he go and have Alfred and so on help him make more smoke bombs, but he's always thinking, how can I make these smoke bombs better? So that when I put the new smoke bombs in my utility belt, they're smokier, right? Like, it's just like constant improvement. Constant improvement. That's the difference between a lot of us and Batman. We're not constantly improving ourselves. We're not studying, implementing, practicing. Keep on doing that, and you'll have no problem with the meaningless edutainment absurdly thriving. You'll be able to conquer it all. Be able to conquer everything fast. All right. Thank you, everybody, too, for your thumbs up. Keep them coming. And if you're watching the replay, the opportunity to chat is still down below. Boo Boo the Bear's here. Good morning, Professor, he says, or she says, Boo Boo. Thank you for saying hello. And yeah, Dr. Metivier in the house. You ever see Videodrome? Videodrome has a character named Professor Oblivion. and he's a really cool dude. You got to check out Videodrome. I love that movie. All right. Greg says, I use pink method on character bodies 2 and street Loki. Churches or street. Great. That's awesome. Oh, the link method, not the pink method. I was just like, oh, another thing to memorize and look up later. But maybe there is a pink method. I should come up with something. New from Magnetic Memory Method, the pink method. Dun, 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 dun. Yes. This is good. This is good. I'm happy with this. Okay, so you say, Juan, what I do now is putting all the information in one simple image and try to explain what I just read with my own words. This is some kind of different memory palace. That's great. You're evolving. Wonderful. Keep doing that. Boo Boo says I'm male. Okay, Boo Boo. I'll try to remember that. Boo Boo the bear. Male for all eternity. Awesome. Well, you know, things can change though. Don't feel trapped. Thanks everybody for being here. I'm not sure I'm a natural comedian, but hope you like my silly jokes today. Greg says, yeah, laughing, it was the link method, head, hands, feet, characters. Ah, I see, okay. Yeah, well, Batman's great for that. I use Batman that way a lot. Snapshot, New Farm Park, Brisbane. Kisha Verba, or Werba. I'm not reliant on my phone. I can happily be off it for weeks on end when on holidays, but we have seen relationships fall apart due to phones, tablets, and computer gaming. Sad. She's got iPhone neck. Nick, husband. I spend about 1.5 hours a day on my phone, but I could leave the house without it. I think excessive phone use can create less communication in a relationship. Well, yeah, look, if this is the way you walk with your partner, that's not only less communication and iPhone neck, but wouldn't you like to be holding hands instead of this cold fish of a device? Seriously. When my wife and I, we were walking around, hands held close. Oh, it's so nice. Christy Dawson, I would absolutely not leave the house without it. I always rely on my phone for directions. My partner and I made a rule that we would really try not to pick up our phone when we are together at a cafe or for lunch. We really try. Don't try. Do or do not. There is no try, says Yoda, right? How could you maybe, I've got an idea. Let's make magnetic memory method purses and wallets. And they've got like a combination on them. And what you got to do is you've got to put your cell phone, your smartphone, or your dumb phone into your wallet or your purse or your backpack, and then spin this little thing or touch a button, and it'll show you this password. You have to use the major method to memorize the password, and you can't get your smartphone back until you actually put in the digit. But it has to be after 45 minutes or something like that, right? So you've got dinner settings, dinner with date settings, which is 2 hours, and it'll automatically transmit the solution in case you get in trouble to the magnetic memory method database. And so for, say, a $7 fee, if you can't remember your password to get your smartphone back, you will then get the password for a fee, right? And what that will do is it will get people to actually not only put their phones away for dinner time, but it'll actually get them to use the memory techniques, and it'll generate it'll generate money for charity, because we'll put all of that to real memory research. I'm really skeptical of a lot of the memory research out there. I think they're asking the wrong questions, and they could be doing the research better. Maybe I'm not qualified to say that because I'm not a trained scientist, but we'll see. I may become a uninvited consultant on some memory research here in the near future. Sandra says, thanks for these presentations. They are a highlight of the day. Well, thanks for the kind words, Sandra. And if you agree and you haven't hit the thumbs up yet, please hit the thumbs up. Let me know where you are in the world if you're just joining us. If this is the replay for you, comment below. Pushpa says, I also have the problem of memory. I'm 19 years old. Oh, that's too young for memory problems. Which technique is best for memory and how to memorize? Pushpa, here's the thing. This is a little bit of tough love for you. There are so many memory techniques. The best is the wrong question. The best question is, where can I get some training And the way that you do it is you go to magneticmemorymethod.com and you register for the free course. I'm going to email you some stuff, and then don't save it for later, but dive in. When you go through the videos, there's going to be some worksheets. Those worksheets ask you to fill them in. It's effort. You're going to have to do something to get the results. Do those things. When you watch the video, it's going to give you homework exercise. I had this really weird email from a guy recently who was complaining about video 2 in the sequence. I didn't see his homework from video 1. So what's the point of watching video 2 if you didn't watch video 1 and do the homework? Please, someone explain that to me. How could you complain about video 2 if you didn't actually get the value out of video 1? Because here's the thing, I'm guilty of meat too. Everything I do is meaningless edutainment, absurdly thriving on the internet if you don't take action with the techniques, if you don't study them, if you don't implement them, if you don't practice them with information that improves your life. So that might not be what you want to hear, but if you just go out and actually implement this, instead of consuming meat, you actually take it one sip at a time, SIP, you're going to get results. Otherwise, why clutter your inbox? It's just insanity. And then the people who complain about free, I mean, they don't really offend me or anything. It's just, I got a chuckle about it. But another guy, he was like, there was a live stream, and his complaint to me, or his question to me was, how do I suppress the rage that I feel from the background noises on your free videos? Well, first of all, give your head a shake, because it's free, right? And just don't watch them. There's studio produced material you can also watch. You can complete the free homework exercises and get results from them. And then put some comments in. You know, you're asking for help, and that's great. And I said in my response, thank you for feeling that you could complain about these things. But really give your head a shake, because this is madness. And as I explained in the comment there, I once almost gave up the opportunity for a treasure that has served me for years, because it was on photocopied paper. This crazy magician wanted almost $200 for 3 pages of information on copyrighted, on photocopied paper. Let that sink in. Not only that, but when I got it home, because I did buy it, it had really good marketing, like sales copy, even though it was typed in. I got it home, and then I sympathized with this dude. I almost was pulling my hair out because there were typos on those 3 pages. And it's just like, you're gonna charge $200 for something that has typos in it? And I'm saying to now this guy, give your head a shake, right? But I had the wherewithal. Oh yeah, and the other thing too was that it had a staple that had gone rusty and was bleeding over the page, each page. And I just, oh man, what am I thinking? Why did I buy this? But I wanted the secret so bad. But I devoted myself to these 3 pages. And I did what the 3 pages said. None of you have seen me do magic tricks. Maybe you will one day. Or maybe you have. Maybe you've seen something here and there, little secret releases. But what I learned from those 3 pages, to this day, is the trick that astounds people the most. And they never forget it, right? Because I just simply got over myself. And I understood something very, very powerful that day, which is that this guy's using price as a filter to keep out the riffraff, to keep out the people who've got their heads so stuck up wherever that they can't even see value right in front of them. They're in meat land, meaningless edutainment, absurdly thriving, mostly on the internet these days, but it used to thrive other places before the internet. And he only wants the people who could study and implement and practice with the information that actually does something. So I got through his filter, and I got through my own filter, and bam! This was in 2006. I have performed that trick hundreds of times. Hundreds of times. It blows people away. It blows people away. I actually then had a magic mentor when I was living in New Westminster outside of Vancouver, not so, well, actually quite some time ago now, but man, he also gave me this special edge. But the price that he wanted for an hour of his time was insane, but worth every penny, because it was a filter to keep out the riffraff of people who weren't ever going to use it seriously. Interesting, isn't it? And the pleasure that that trick has created in the years since, oh, I might have a bad day sometimes and not perform it as well as other days, but it also never fails. It never fails because of what I invested in the mentor who helped me take it to the next level. Because he said, the way that you're doing it, there's something a little bit that could be better, because you just don't see this angle. And the reason I didn't see the angle is because I'd never really put myself in a situation with an expert who does this day in and day out and really knows his stuff, and also was enabled to spend some time with me because of the alchemy of what money does with time, and just shifted all of that perspective. And of course my mirror neurons are firing at a completely different level because I got skin in the game. Like I want what I paid for, right? And my eyes are just wide open, my ears are open in ways that are never open with the meat, the meaningless education, absurdly thriving. It's not universally true, but it's pretty true. Because you can't see value right in front of you a lot of the times, because you're just lost in the sickness of free on the internet. And you don't do like people just say, hey, do this, and then people don't, right? Or they save it for later and they never come back to it because they don't use the speed of implementation rule. In any case, it's just something happens when you get skin in the game. You actually decide that you're going to get expertise on your side, and you're going to open up all of those neurons and open up the floodgates and absolutely be 100% in and do what you're told, or at least follow the recommendations in the way that makes sense to you and ask questions to get guidance, but not stupid questions. There are no stupid questions as such, but there are also questions that are a waste of time because the person is just looking for meat, right? They're looking for meaningless education, absurdly thriving, instead of, here's what I've done on my own, here's all the things that I think should have worked but didn't, and then they give you work as a teacher to work with. They've met you halfway. This is also known as the Feynman technique, right? Because Feynman said, you want to learn? Well, don't go asking your teacher questions until you've documented what you did on your own. You'll usually find the answer on your own, which gives you pride, confidence, and courage, and so forth. But even if you can't, there's no shame in it. There's only shame in it when you go to the teacher and be like totally crippled, and all you're really doing is telling your teacher that you're crippled. And then your teacher will either have the wherewithal to give you a bit of tough love and say, well, there's the book. Did you read it? Well, yes, I did. Did you take notes? No, I didn't. Well, maybe go read it again and take some notes with your hand, right? Not highlight with color on an app, but actually get this into your fingers, see it in front of your own eyes, get some results, and then maybe write an essay about it, right? Mind blown. Maybe I might want to do something with information to learn it better. Let's check in with our people. But anyway, that's the tough love thing, and it really helps. Maybe not everybody, but certainly has helped me in my life. Greg says, I always follow you. Thank you for your work. Thank you, Greg. I really appreciate that. And always the best place is at magneticmemorymethod.com. I know how old-fashioned a website, but so much material there just waiting for you. But don't turn it into meat. Actually implement what's talked about there. Peggy says, when eating out with family and friends, everyone puts their phones above the table. The first person to refer to their phone during the meal has to pay the entire tip for everyone's meal. Peggy, that's awesome. Everybody do that. Forget about my new Kickstarter project about the backpack that locks your cell phone in there and displays a code that you have to memorize and so forth. Just do what Peggy said. That's a great one. Julie says, oh, I'm dying to know what was on those 3 pages. Julie, one of these days we'll do Magnetic Memory Live in a location near you that you can come to, or you travel to Australia. I will show you. And I'll show you a whole bunch of other magic tricks too. Because here's the thing, right? It's never about one magic trick, in the same way it's never about one memory technique. The more memory techniques you know, the better all of them improve. And then you can do jazz, right? Mind jazz, memory jazz. And same thing with magic. Like sometimes when I do my little magic shows, half of it's planned, half of it I just make stuff up on the fly. And that's because I have mastery of multiple techniques, right? Some people, they give numbers to the different principles in magic. I've heard different ones, 21 principles and so forth. In any case, there is a kind of like guided path through the multiple levels of the techniques that are there. And if you just understand all of them, every single one of them becomes better. And then when you practice all of them, even if you're never going to use this or that, elm of leisure domain or sleight of hand, it just improves your practice, which is why I get Magic Magazine every month. And I just try something. You know, I might not learn every trick there, but I get the cards in my hand, try to puzzle it out, see why he's thinking of doing this, why he's doing that, and so forth. Peggy says, anyway, it just constantly improves your practice. Study, implement, practice. Study, implement, practice, one sip at a time. Peggy says, I'd just like to learn how to pull a coin out of my granddaughter's ear. Well, Peggy, Google is your friend. There's lots of free training on that. The best thing, though, Peggy, is if you can get to the level where you actually go like this and say, okay, here's my coin, I put it in my hand, and blow, and it's gone. And then you go like this, and then it appears, right? Now, you should be able to do that at some level where you actually just, create the illusion that there's actually something there, even if there isn't. Now, that's next level stuff. I shouldn't be teaching magic, but I'm not a magic teacher. But in any case, there are people who make coins disappear that were never there in the first place. And it's so awesome. Okay, so Julie says, was that the Feynman technique? Yes, Richard Feynman, but not spelt that way, spelled a different way. Let me do that tough love thing and like put in Richard Feynman and see what Google says when you type for it. Because I'd actually be curious, if you spell Feynman that way, what will come up? But Peggy has what I believe is the correct spelling. Julie says, I've always been interested in magic. I like the connection to memory. Yeah, the memory connection to magic is really, really interesting because memory techniques and magicians go together a lot. All the best magicians, let me take that back. Many of the best magicians use memory techniques. It's a key strategy in some memory techniques, but also it's part of audience management, right? Being able to remember people's names and being able to remember people's names in a way that is on the fly and in the moment when all your brain is just humming and flowing with so many things going on. Like you've got to your patter, you've got your stuff, you've got like this frame where you control the frame right here, and you want people to be looking because you don't want the people behind to see a different thing unless you're doing a dual reality thing. And you've got to manage this, and you still got to remember names, right? So being able to manage this space and go like this and actually have a coin appear, like that's something that's really cognitively demanding. So Harry Lorraine was, of course, a magician, and I saw some pretty recent videos where he's still performing in his old age, doing magic, and he's so good. Like he just knows the people's names that he's performing for, even though there's a lot of stuff going on at the same time. And Harry Lorraine apparently also had a school, and he would teach people how to teach memory techniques. And one of them is a guy named Darwin Ortiz. And it's really funny because I saw Ortiz one time performing and not remembering people's names, knowing this about it. So, yeah, not to make him feel bad or anything, but it was just kind of shocking. And you see that sometimes. But also, in that particular presentation, to be fair, he was doing a teaching presentation. So he was performing the tricks to teach. And so his express purpose was not audience management so much as demonstration of tricks and then teaching them. In any case, really interesting stuff. And the memory magic connection goes back a lot and is there. Laura's here. Hello, Laura. Thanks for saying hello. If you're just joining us, do please say hello. And Julie says, Feynman Googled straight to Feynman, correctly spelled. Thanks. Great. Laura, let us know what you're doing, where you are in the world, if you have smartphone issues. I'm not unaware of the irony that many of you may be on a smartphone now. And in any case, let's get back to our people here. We haven't talked with Rod yet. Look at Rod with his iPhone neck. iPhone neck, anyone? Not pretty.
Rod, I use my phone for working, taking calls, and answering emails periodically. I probably spend at least 3 hours on it during the day and another hour and a half, or 1 to 2 hours at night and in the morning. Woo! Nighttime. Cherry, 37. I commute for an hour each day to and from work, and probably spend 3 to 5 hours on my phone per day. Look at this. This is tragic. This is tragic. With a child, and they didn't even give the child a thought bubble. This is the perspective we need as well. We don't know this child's name, and we don't know their feelings about this. Hey, how do you feel about your mom being married to that phone there? Because husband over here. Wow. Failing here. No, but I'm glad that they're writing about this issue. I'm glad that it's front cover, 2-page feature. That's very, very good. So I'm making light humor and not at all stomping on the effort, even if I'm a little bit critical about how journalism is written sometimes. But the demands that we make must also be forgiving for the treasures that we get. Really important. So Greg says, what about to multiplicate the same low keys like copies? Well, low key, we don't talk about that here. We talk about magnetic stations. So that's the first thing we got to get rid of. We got to replace for better. Okay, so you carry on though. Let's just go with what you're saying. Copying low key. For example, if we need to use it for science terms, can you use the same with atoms, images inside the same, or whom you use for the other? Okay, so Greg, it's a great question. The question that you're getting into has to do with reusing memory palaces, doubling up, and so forth. We're going to release an interview here soon with Jesse Villalobos, who is a great student of the magnetic memory method, and we talk about some ways to do that. And I just got the editing notes back from Anna, which I'll then be reviewing and then sending to Ali to edit. So that's coming out just as soon as we can get it out to you, and you'll get some ideas from that. But generally, if you want to reuse memory palaces, here's the thing. Make sure you're using, and it sounds like you are, but just for those who aren't, make sure that you're using them well in the first place. You've got that down. If you don't have the foundation, you don't put the cart before the horse. Get the foundation good. What does that mean? You should have at least 10 memory palaces that are just humming along. You've used them. They're really plump, and you've actually successfully used them for 10 pieces of information each. So let's call it 100 pieces of information. This is a general guideline. And then you get into practicing using them multiple times. One easy way to do that is memorize cards and just practice multiple times. Because some people get into ghosting, or they have ugly sister effect, as it can be called, not exactly the same things. They might get into presque-vous, or I don't know, like, you get into trouble, maybe. Unless you've listened to my podcast episode called Beginner's Guide to Overcoming the Ugly Sister Effect. Please do go through that material if you haven't already. And then you practice that skill of reusing memory palaces. And then there's other things. There's so many things that you can do. There's the telesynoptic memory palace technique, which is just like way too advanced. I probably shouldn't even teach it, because it gets people's gears rolling, and the cart is not only before the horse in that case, the cart is on the moon when it comes to the telesynoptic memory palace technique, because there's things that you can do, but that maybe don't relate to practicing with information that improve your life. Now, the reason why that you would want to know about the telesynoptic memory palace technique and you'd want to practice it has to do with challenging yourself to grow more than it has to do with practical approaches. And I was impractical at some point, but it does work. It's just due to the exponential nature of what works in it, it's never going to be used to the maximum extent to which that one feels that it could be useful, because we all are in the denial of death, which is another issue altogether. But I just was laughing there because I got an image of my podcast interview with Tony Buzan, and we were talking about how great it would be to live forever, and he just goes through this list of all these people that he would love to be able to study and get more acquainted with. Of course, and I just love the sound of his voice. By the way, this is a good point to Shout out to Tony Buzan. Congratulations on the new book, Mind Map Mastery. Go and grab this. Go and grab this. Support the people that you like and that have helped you, and make sure that it's on your shelf. Yeah, okay, get it for digital if that's your bag. But think of a book as an investment for your kids, for your friends, for your family, for the library contribution in the future, for the used bookstore, whatever. It's not just about you all the time, right? Pay it forward. And I'm really looking forward to diving in. Incidentally, too, Nelson Dellis has a new book. He sent me an advanced copy. I'm going to be going through that, reviewing it on the Magnetic Memory Method podcast. It's going to be great. It's going to be awesome. I read the intro, just looked through it. Wow, colorful, amazing. And I think he's going to be on the podcast in August. And maybe for the mastermind people, we'll do something special as well with him, private training. And he's all about this: study, implement, practice. Really amazing guy. And a great model for not just memory for you, but memory for others with his Climb for Memory project. This is what we need. We need these people who step outside of themselves and go on and beyond the self. Juan says, thanks for speaking with us, Anthony. You're very welcome. Have to go to sleep. Thanks for teaching us how to survive on this horrific academic world of massive memorization. I admire you a lot, and your English is great. Oh, thank you. I'm still learning English, working on it every day, but I appreciate your kind words. I don't want to give the impression when I say that I'm not a native English speaker, but one of the problems with the word fluency is that no one's fluent in their mother tongue. There's so much more English to learn. There's so much more English to be learned by using English better. And Jesse Villalobos, who is going to be on an upcoming YouTube video here, he told me how much he loves that I use big words. And a lot of people have told me, and even Google itself says, oh, don't use big words. They now have a reading test, and they're going to stop sending you traffic if you don't have grade 1 level reading. This is morally disgusting. You really want to do this to the world for some advertising revenue? Give your head a shake, people. There's a book called Just Being Difficult, which is about this tension between people who write at higher levels, more complicated levels, and people who write at grade 1 level, right? Now, there's a place for everything in the world. But the idea that Google is going to give you search results of namby-pamby, Mickey Mouse, grade 1 stuff because humans have been so degraded because of iPhone neck? Oh my God, that we have our search is going to be, our search results are going to be Mickey Mouse, namby-pamby stuff that makes me want to cry. Meaningless edutainment, absurdly thriving on the internet because the internet is ruining our ability to read at any kind of level. So as much as I appreciate Juan calling it the horrific academic world of massive memorization, Juan, with all due respect, it's a blessing. All of these complex ideas, these $10 words like architectonic tautology and, I don't know, we can think of other ones. Pregnans constructio, sometimes rendered constructio pregnans, or whatever, like foreign languages with all their words. Are we really gonna start calling that a nightmare? No, not on this channel, not in this project. That's demeaning the beauty of language. That's to say that knowledge is our enemy. Knowledge is the path to everything, to bliss. This is what James Schwartz talks about all the time. The fire of self-knowledge. Well, how are you going to have self-knowledge if you can't deal with words? I read something from his crew, James Schwartz here, that was talking about why language is so essential to self-inquiry, to knowledge. What is knowledge? Knowledge is that which eliminates ignorance. And if you're going to start running and screaming, and Google itself, the algorithms are going to start running and screaming from words that might challenge people. Sad and dark times, my friends. Sick times, actually. Morally depraved times. So they can get more ad revenue. Ad revenue for what? for more pollution producing cars, more energy sucking videos about people who play video games online. I mean, come on. It's cool. I'm not saying anything against it, but we're just creating more pollution from ad revenue. Sick. Peggy says, yikes, what reading test does Google use? This is all just hearsay so far. I don't know for sure that they're going to put that into, but I have it on good authority, actually. Oh, and by the way, it's worse than that. I don't know which tests they're going to use, Peggy, but they actually, there are several. There are several tests. I think one of them is called the Fleischmann reading test. Speaking of Fleisch, in case you don't know, Fleisch is the word for meat. Meaningless, edutainment, absurdly thriving on the internet. Sad, sick territory. But there's an app called Hemingway app that'll actually take your writing and show you how to dumb it down, right? Which has its place. It has its place. And I think my writing has improved from simplifying it a little bit. But go and read that book, Just Being Difficult. Decide for yourself. Because there's an argument to be made that there are some ideas out there that just simply can't be expressed in simple language. There's this really negative, dark, bad, poisonous quote from Einstein that you know, if you really understand something, you should be able to express it simply. Nonsense. That's absolute garbage. There's all kinds of people who are filled with exquisitely powerful ideas, concepts that they can't enunciate in simple language, but they do know it, right? And there are actual formulations of ideas that require a little bit of difficulty to get them out there. And they might require a little bit of taking it one sip at a time. Study the techniques, implement the techniques. Practice the techniques with information that improves your life. J.A.'s here. You're going to love this one, J.A. This replay, we got reading recommendations like no tomorrow. And McLuhan came up. And of course, Cronenberg. You can't have Cronenberg and McLuhan one without the other. I mean, you could, but that would be sad. Oh, and Norm Macdonald too. So it was Canadian City today. And yes, J.A., it is a nice Batman cup. If you're in the Magnetic Memory Method Mastermind, oh wow, there is a treat waiting for you when it comes to cups. Wow, indeed. So, Peggy says, most daily newspapers are at grade 6 level. Yeah, well, they want it to go deeper, lower. I guess it's because they want grade 1 people to read newspapers. Okay, so Juan says, I was saying horrific because medical students need to learn tons of information in short periods of time. To us, it is like a nightmare. Many times we read and people memorize from 6 a.m. to 12 p.m. every day. Juan, thank you for that. And I didn't mean to rain on the parade of what you were saying, but rather, I still see that as a blessing. Isn't that a beautiful opportunity? Just use memory techniques, though. Don't make it a torturous situation. Make it the best possible situation. Get the Magnetic Memory Method Masterclass. Get the Mastermind. magneticmemorymethod.com/WR. Special offer for you right now. It's going to help you. And if you have objections in your mind about why the time isn't right, well, make a mind map about it and see if your objections are true. Maybe they're not. Maybe they're not. Because here's the thing. Well, we already talked about it. Go watch the replay if you want to talk about the magic thing and the having skin in the game principle and so forth. We covered it, but it's really important. All right, so where we left off here was that Miss McGee was telling us about how that social media, gaming, and pornography could activate the pleasure neural pathways of the brain in the same way as drugs or gambling. People can get a sense of validation and self-worth from being liked for their Instagram picture or posts on Facebook, she said. In the short term, you can derive pleasure and reward from getting a like or lots of friends. But people compare themselves and their lives to what other people are wearing, where they work, what holidays they go on, so quite often they'll have a high degree of depression, anxiety, loneliness, and low self-worth. Relationships Australia called on couples to pay less attention to their smartphone and more to their partner. If it dings and you've got to answer, the other person feels they're not as important as the phone, Relationships Australia in Queensland manager Val Holden said. If they don't feel heard or listened to, they can look elsewhere for that attention. Miss Holden said, social media made it easy for couples to reconnect with old flames, creating jealousy issues with current partners. Marriage counselor Clinton Power said cyber cheating was driving more couples apart. There's never been a time in history when you can lie in bed next to your partner and cheat on them. Sometimes people cross boundaries on social media and private messaging, and there might be an aspect of flirting or sexting. The other partner can react as if it was a physical infidelity. Mr. Power said couples were also getting into fights over text messages, which were easy to misinterpret. He said partners and children could feel neglected as a result of obsessively checking emails, texts, and social media. People are spending massive amounts of time on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, and they get so obsessed with it, they're not even aware how often they're checking the devices, he said. The reward center of the brain can light up with a buzz of the phone. It's almost like a chimpanzee pressing a button to get a pellet of food. Now that's not all, because that's a great little portrait. Not a really great ending, but a great portrait. but this is interesting on the same page. So we're going to go over that in a second, but let's check in with our chats here. Oh, we got mass exodus. Greg, that looks like a great quote. Please let us know, for those of us who don't speak that language, what you're saying. Julie says, I have to leave now. Thank you for this session, Anthony. Thank you, Julie, for being here. Really appreciate it. Always great to spend time with you, and I'm always honored and grateful for the time that we all get to spend together. And you, Julie, you bring so much to what we're doing here. What was it today, April, that I learned? Ju-yi, how? Oh, how, Ju-yi. Okay, whoops. How, Ju-yi. Couldn't you do it the other way, though? No? Okay. I like to look for wiggle room. But anyway, good idea. Always good idea when you're here, and I love it. J.A. says, I'll watch the replay to get the context. Like I said earlier, your thinking is much appreciated, especially in regard to memorizing your past. Good night here and good afternoon there. Thanks, J.A. Thanks for being here. How did I get that wrong? I got to think about that. Now, here's the thing. When you make a mistake like that, you've got to ask, how did I get it wrong? And in this case, it's like, what did I get wrong there? I didn't get any of the words wrong. I just got the order wrong. So what's the memory issue? It is a grammar issue. So then I gotta ask more questions, right? And practice more, and maybe make another mistake, so forth. But from a memory perspective, I've got to look at the memory palace. Now the memory palace is over there, because we were just walking through the market, and I just asked a question about something that I didn't know how to say. I'm not sure why I didn't know it yet. That's one of the weird things in language learning. You'll be like, what the heck I don't even know how to say that simple thing yet. That's a textbook problem, of course. But anyway, I won't tell you what the magnetic imagery is for Ju, but I remember there's the second tone and the fourth tone. Second tone and fourth tone, right? Yes, okay. So second tone and fourth tone. I remember this because, well, it's because I used the major method, and John Hurt, who played the Fool in a production of King Lear, was there, and major method tells us that N is the number for 2 and R is the number for 4. And so what you do is you make a word, and that's a really difficult one, actually, N and R. So Nar is the German word for fool. And who's the fool that I remember the best? Well, John Hurt playing the Fool in King Lear. So it's like a little bit of a skip through the mind, but actually that's not frustration. It doesn't lead to frustration. It doesn't lead to mental confusion. What it does is it stretches your abilities and your skills, and you learn how to deal with multiple levels of information at the same time. Now, so Ju, again, I'm not going to get into what that imagery is for that, but nonetheless, it's there. And now I got to remember, you see, this is like the grammar processing. So is it always that way? Yes. So it has to be that good comes before. Yes. Okay, so what are we going to do to memorize this? I'm going to go to the memory palace, and how for good, right? Okay, so instantly a question mark is coming to mind to integrate with my imagery. But it can't be just any question mark. It's got to be like this massive, it's got to be the Riddler, right? The Riddler, question mark. Was it Jim Carrey who played the Riddler in one of the Batman movies? I think so. Let's just go with that. And now we're going to add that in and use the rest of the magnetic memory method to make sure it sticks. Because the core word stuck, but the order didn't, which is annoying. But instead of being embarrassed about it, it's just an opportunity to think about, So it's always that way? I bet you I'll find an exception to the rule eventually, and I'll make a mistake on it, but it doesn't matter. But in any case, this is how we grow. This is how we get better with the skills. We just submit ourselves to the study, implement, practice principle, one step at a time. Everything is its own situation. And you can scale. You scale with memory palaces. How much time do we have before lunch? Half an hour? Woo! Okay, so let's put on the clock. We got baby boomers to get to on gaming bandwagon. If you've got any questions, pop them into the chat now. If you're just joining us, hit the thumbs up, and we're going to get through this article here, and then we're going to call it a day in about half an hour. So Greg says it was about Divina Commedia by Dante. Did I say that right? Divina Commedia by Dante. He says we need to become true people through knowledge and wisdom. People who want to learn and challenging themselves are different, are true people. Thank you. Excellent, excellent, excellent. I would love to be able to read Dante in that special language that he was so kind to enforce into the public sphere. That was great. Thank you, Dante. And of course, Dante should have a special place in our heart because Dante's given you memory palaces. Read the Divine Comedy. Read the Inferno. Wow, there's many memory palaces in there. And it's very memorable because of how he constructed it as a memory palace. Wow, mind blown. I love Dante. I love Dante very much. So, where are we at? Oh yeah, newspaper. Mind blip. Baby boomers on gaming bandwagon. Female baby boomers are more likely to be video gamers than teenage boys, new research has found. 1/4 of online gamers are aged over 55. More people than any other age bracket, research company Nielsen has found. Astonishingly, 1.9 million of them are women, outnumbering men, of whom 1.5 million are estimated to be gamers. Figures suggested older women's addiction to Candy Crush, pictured here, conveniently, seemed to be fueling the trend. Candy Crush. I see a memory palace waiting to be born, you Candy Crushers. There were 586,000 unique players of Candy Crush Saga. It was followed by Words with Friends 2, which had 564,000. Unsurprisingly, however, most of us are glued to our devices than ever before. The time per person of people accessing entertainment has grown from 19 hours and 26 minutes to 23 hours and 3 minutes over 12 months. Somebody help me with the math there. What's the percentage here? The amount of people going online has risen 4% in the same period. We're also more likely to be watching multiple screens at once or dual screening. Dun dun dun. With 1/3 of Gen Y people saying they would surf the net on their phone while watching TV. After baby boomers, 20 to 35-year-olds were the next likely group to use online games at 20% of the market. In December 2017, 14.5 million Australians engaged with the gaming subcategory all devices, and surprisingly, 9 million was via a smartphone. Educational group Parramatta Computer Palace for Seniors President Deborah Martin said she wasn't surprised women were loving the online world of gaming. That's probably because there's no interesting men around anymore because they're online with Tinder apps. The women I know, Tinder, there's a way to spend your time. The women I know play games, but they tend to be card games and Candy Crush and Words with Friends, rather than shooting each other and killing as many people as possible. All right, I got multiple tabs open. One of my tabs is for Tindering, and the other is for, I'm not even going to say it, for first-person gaming. No, and 1,000 times no. Although I did first-person shoot some zombies recently because I was doing some memory research, and that was fun. And there's a memory palace in that as well. It was the Walking Dead video game with the crossbows. Bam, 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 bam. And my friend Nick and I, we're going to Beethoven Symphony tomorrow. We go to the symphony together. We have season tickets. Wow. Now there's a way to unplug. But we jumped on there and we were playing. We were shooting the zombies and we beat the game. I couldn't believe we beat the game. It was amazing. Lots of fun. But we didn't have our Tinder apps on a dual screen. Thank goodness. Anyway, there's a variety of games out there, and she said, which I guess is originally our expert here. Where did the name go? I didn't memorize it. Do I remember the guy from the other page? Tony. It must have been Tony Buzan. Let's see. I think it was page 1. Where did page 1 go? Memory test, memory test. Please stand by as we test the memory. We can remember Tony Buzan, but we can't, which was the Australian Medical Association I think he was involved in. Oh, this doesn't look good. We can remember Tony Buzan, but we can't find page 1. Watch the replay, I guess. What were my mnemonics for him? Tony Parsons and Tone Loc with a singing baritone. Anyway, I'm pretty sure it was Tony Buzan. But I can't remember the name of this person because I didn't code it. Okay, so Deborah Martin. Deborah Martin. She said that there were still some people who had no interest in the internet until they discovered they could do something useful, such as look up bus timetables. Okay, that is useful. People who had no interest in the internet until they discovered they could do something useful, like look up bus timetables. No, actually, you don't look up bus timetables. What you do is you look up algorithmic decisions that show you the next bus that's coming. Unless I'm mistaken, but that's usually how it works. Unless we're talking about Greyhound cross country. It is about finding something that will motivate them to master the basics. Oh, right. Candy Crush. That'll help you master the basics real quick. The basics of repetitive, nonsensical behavior with no meaningful outcome. The game expert's owner, Sal Temsa, said more women were playing video games. There is a really big array of women who do play video games, he said. End of article. Wow, so that really matches up with this other article here in a real profound and wonderful way. I'm really grateful for how these two things come together. Wow. But anyway, I'm so grateful for the newspaper, and I'm glad that the article is here. And thank you for reporting on this epidemic. Really appreciate it, because it's important. It's important that we have this opportunity to look that up. And the news is really interesting. I'm getting more and more interested in the news because, here's page 1. I'm interested in the news more and more because I want newspapers to stick around. I know I'm being a bit of a light humor here. But I want this to stick around. I want people to still engage with paper, with real. So I'm starting to read the newspaper more. Because you can't read the news online anyway. It's just pop-ups and junk and really, really difficult. And then you got to scroll, and then the next thing you know, some video is going to start playing, and there's all this sidebar junk and stuff. And then there's links to click and so forth. Why don't we just read from beginning to end and see what's going on in the world without hopping and jumping and skipping to everything and having multiple tabs open where we get 2 seconds through an article and then we're gone to something else. We never come back to it. Tony Buzan. Okay, that's right. Australian Medical Association. Let's see. How Jue. Good. Perfect. We got it right. Because we fixed our mnemonic. We fixed it. I got pronunciation issues. Second tone, fourth tone. But I'm so glad that I can remember that it was the second tone and the fourth tone. Because you can't work on pronunciation if you don't actually memorize how it's supposed to be pronounced and how it's supposed to be said. and so forth. So it's going to be some while before I say the tones correctly, but we'll get there. We'll get there. All the quicker because we memorize what the tones are supposed to be. So, Greg asks, can you use Inferno like rooms for your memory palace, or Purgatorio o Paradiso for Divina Commedia? Well, it's a great question, Greg, and in one of the Magnetic Memory Method print newsletters that didn't have buttons to click, I talked about using things like that in a Magnetic Memory Method memory palace. So if you want to go to magneticmemorymethod.com/WR, let me know that you were here on this call, and if you got it, I'll send you that. I'll send it to you so you can use the Divine Comedy for memory palaces. But it's a little complex to explain just now. And you sound like you know what you're doing anyway, so maybe you can figure it out on your own and we can have a correspondence about it. All right. You remember me mentioning Leaf? Yeah. Really great. You have a good memory. You could figure out the Divine on your own as a memory palace. Very good. Boo Boo, still here. Great. Thanks for bibliomancy. The question about bibliomancy from Boo Boo Bear is, I'm curious about bibliomancy, which you spoke about in a previous session. Is it a pre-reading technique similar to what Adler writes about in How to Read a Book? Well, I haven't gotten around to reading Adler yet, so I don't quite know. But bibliomancy possibly has connections to that. But bibliomancy is, how should I describe it? It's pre-reading the best of speed reading without speed reading, which obviously speed reading is a lot about pre-reading, plus memory techniques with memory palace, with the proper memory palace strategy, and without hoping and praying and wishing that you remember stuff, but rather making very, very targeted decisions that guide you throughout every step of the process. So you milk the most out of books, and you also have decision parameters that help you remember, oh, wait a second, I don't have to use this with this book. I want to use it with this book, right? So bibliomancy, it's a kind of silly term. I came up with it around the time that I had wrote an article which was about cryptomnesia and cryptomancy. So cryptomnesia is a term from Carl Jung, and he had talked about this effect where people might write an article or a book or a poem that actually was not original to them, but they'd just forgotten that they'd read it elsewhere. And he pointed his finger at Nietzsche about this. Maybe there's something to it, maybe not. And then cryptomancy was a term that I used. This was in my academic career, talking about film studies and so forth. Now that article is in a book that is hideously expensive because academics have this, scholarly presses have this really, really negative habit of making their books so expensive and locking them up only in libraries. And maybe it's that skin in the game principle I talked about earlier, but I don't think so. I think in the case of academia, it's quite strange that they have paywalls for universities and stuff for that kind of knowledge. Something broken in society when it comes to that kind of thing. Or maybe not. Maybe it's just exactly as it should be. I don't know. But in any case, if anyone was interested in my cryptomancy article, you could get in touch and I would provide you with that because I have all the rights to do so. But it is in a scholarly book, a book chapter, and its reading level would be relatively high. And I may be 100% wrong about all my conclusions in there, but I was very concerned about some of the trends in cinema and very concerned about some of the accusations about what cinema was having the power to do in terms of influencing behaviors, particularly political behaviors. And so I think you would perhaps benefit from that if you're interested. If not, well, forget about it, so to speak. But get in touch if you'd like to read that article. Peggy says, interesting, I think Adler wrote about syntopical reading too, which I wonder if it might be connected to the telesynoptical. It's not telesynoptical, it's the telesynoptic memory palace. And I'm not sure because I haven't read the Adler, but maybe. Mortimer Adler's How to Read a Book has a great point. Read with a purpose. Great point, Sandra. Thank you for that. Yeah, read with a purpose is a great one. And here's a problem, and it's a problem with universities, it's a problem with people, it's a problem with the world, is that people read books without being in line with their purpose. It really helps to have a purpose. And that purpose, I read a great book called The Culture Code by Daniel Coyle, which I remember him to be Daniel Coyle because I associated him with my friend and koi fish. And the Culture Code, well, I didn't really have to do that much. Although I sometimes wish that I did more because I'm like, was it the Culture Code? But if you don't use the mnemonics, then you're guessing. You're hoping and you're wishing and you're praying. But I wanted to remember his name anyway. So I'm quite confident it's Daniel Coyle. Anyway, the thing is that I read that book with purpose, and in that book, he talks about creating a beacon of purpose. And so, we hear this all the time, know your why. But knowing your why is really, really important. It's not cliche, even if it is a cliche. Because if you don't have a why, then how do you have a purpose? And how do you construct a proper goal that has proper milestones that move you towards the outcome that you want? I mean, don't you think it would be amazing, like really amazing, if you had a wonderful, wonderful beacon of purpose in your life, where you just get up every morning and you're like, I'm going to read Tony Buzan's Mind Map Mastery because I have 10 amazing outcomes, right? I'm not sure if I have 10, but one of which is I want to learn mind mapping better. 1, I want to learn mind mapping better. 2, I want to help others find Tony Buzan's work, because if they don't already have Tony Buzan's work, then they need it. 3, because people who haven't heard from Tony Buzan for a while would greatly benefit from it. Maybe I bet you I could find 10 here. Let's keep going. 4, books are awesome. Get them, read them with purpose. 5, mind mapping actually helps you find your purpose, because if you didn't have a purpose and you knew how to learn mind map, then you could mind map your way to having a purpose. 6, having a purpose from a mind map would help you use more mind maps more purposely in the future. 7, I'm doing this because I also think that I want to work with color more, right? And I want to be able to draw my mnemonic magnetic imagery more for people. And I want to actually, I'm now at 10 already, but I want to actually be able to do the work that I do better. So mind mapping helps as well. And I want to be able to spread all of this around the internet, because I have this idea that we could reach 1 billion people, right? 1 billion people. I know a lot of entrepreneurs that are like, yeah, I want to reach 1 million people. Well, I already did that, right? And I knew that it was coming. So I needed to have a bigger number. So I've always talked about 1 billion people. But more than 1 billion people for 1 billion years. Should we be so lucky to be around that long? I haven't memorized the prediction numbers around when the sun is going to disappear. But whatever. Wishful thinking has its place, right? But let's say 1 billion people for 1 billion years, which then would, in a matrix-like style, in turn, billionize itself, so that everybody's using memory techniques. Doesn't matter how much technology we have. Doesn't matter how many neuronal implants we have. It doesn't matter how much we don't need memory anymore. We'll still have memory. In the same way, we'll still have magic tricks. We'll still have people making coins disappear, because there's great pleasure in it. And it's important that it's coins, not bitcoins, not some cryptocurrency, but an actual piece of metal in the hands of a magician. I want that to be around for 1 billion years too, right? So that's my goal. And we're going to do it together. And that's another reason why this is important, because this is about externalizing information into the world that makes your life better. So I want to help you make your life better, and that's why I'm going to read it, and that's why I'm going to use the ideas there, and that's why I'm going to share with you what those ideas are. And this is not paid promotion. This is not. This is just because it's so important. It's that important to me, and I've been deeply influenced by Buzan myself. This is partly happening because of him. I was a kid in school and saw his books. His books had the most amazing covers. You're like drawn to them magnetically, you might say. What's in there, right? And then reading them and thinking, oh, I've got to do this. I've got to do this. Good night, Peggy. Thank you for being here. So if you're enjoying this now, hit the thumbs up and thank Tony Buzan. Send him a tweet. He loves tweets. Figure out Tony Buzan's Twitter and tweet him and tell him that you saw this, and tell him, that you're going to read his book or that you read his book and so forth. And I'm sure he would love that very much, because he loves Twitter. I know he loves Twitter. I know it because he told me it right in front of my eyes while we were chatting. And thank him for inspiring me to do what I'm doing now. If you find it in any way useful to you, pass it forward. I'm sure he would find that interesting and useful to know. And I'm not the only one that has been inspired by Tony Buzan, right? Tanzil Ali and I have talked about his influence. Alex Bowman and I have talked about his influence. Phil Chambers and I have talked about his influence, both personally between us and on the podcast, the Magnetic Memory Method podcast. Dave Farrow and I have talked about his influence. Jonathan Levy and I have talked about his influence. He's, you could make a toss-up between him and Harry Lorraine as the grandfather, but Buzan himself said when I met him that he went to Lorraine, right? The living grandfather, let's say. I don't think we need to get into territorial things like that, or who's the grandfather, or all that sort of stuff. They're like grandpa and grandpa right now for us, and they're both still with us. So we got to get in touch, let them know while they're alive now what it means. And I bet you they put up with a lot of stuff, a lot of tough times. So it's work, right? It's work. The world is filled with work. I'll bet you they put up with a lot of obstacles to get their message out about thinking better, about using your memory, about taking action with these techniques so everything can be better for you on a day-to-day basis. I don't think they ever had it easy, but they sure had a lot of fun. You can see it in what they've done, what they've accomplished. They had so much fun, and they changed the world. They made it possible for the next generation in the way I hope to make it possible for the generations yet to come. And with your help, we can, even if it's just a thumbs up and a comment in the discussion. Or you get a book, or you get a course, or whatever you do, and just be in touch with these people. Let them know what their work means to you. The tiniest sentence of support does more than you can imagine. It's really, really powerful what it can do to keep the engines going. Because this is work, and the internet is against us, not for us. The algorithms are changing so they can just keep churning out all kinds of ad revenue for garbage products that create more pollution. Yay for you guys. You figured out the opioid. You figured out how to addict us to Facebook, and you figured out how to give us iPhone neck. Great for you. Awesome. Thank you. So what are we going to do about it? We're going to go to Rehab? We're going to play Candy Crush till we're blue in the face? I don't think so. Not a wise decision for the future of humanity. Yeah. Look at me. No. What we've got to do is we've got to take care of the people who are still alive with us now, get their books, read them, implement, and pass it forward. Be that stellar example for the children of the future so that they'll be the stellar example for the children of the future. Study, implement, practice. Get rid of this meaningless edutainment, absurdly thriving. Do something cool. Do something good for people. Move it forward. Pass it forward. So Boo Boo the Bear says, I have been thinking for a long time now about how to filter which books to read and not read certain topics, or which chapters to focus on and not on. The filtering part of bibliomancy sounds good. Yeah, get in there. Get in there and develop these filters through practice. Study the techniques, implement them, and practice them with information that will improve your life. Boo Boo, I have the same sort of thing, right? So I have a lot of things competing for my attention, just as you do. I was talking with my great friend Ollie Richards the other day. We had a nice Skype call, and I'm not unaware of the irony of digital amnesia and Skype calling, but it has its place. Like, it has its benefit as long as you put barriers around it and borders and you don't get sunk in. But we were talking about how everything we search now trains the algorithms not only to show us more of what to buy and that we're more likely to buy, but it also shows us more of what we're more likely to consume. And consuming is a weird word, right? It's weirder than surfing the internet. It's a weird word because you consume meat. Meaningless edutainment, absurdly thriving on the internet. But you read books, you watch videos, you interact with media. Maybe, hopefully. But consume? David Cronenberg, we mentioned him a few times already. He has a novel called Consumed. I highly recommend that you read it because it is a very interesting portrait of where we are now and where it might go, especially when you get 3D printing into the mix, which that novel has a lot to do with 3D printing. And it's called Consumed. Very, very timely word. Very timely word. Boo Boo says, oh man, I just thought about Harry Lorraine earlier in the session. God bless him. Oh yeah. Yeah, I spoke with him. He gave me good advice. At the beginning of my career as teaching in this thing, we had a call. He really helped me a lot, as did Buzan. So, yeah, but here's another thing, is like going back to their books and reading their new ones and then reading their old ones. I mean, I've recently reread Tony Buzan, the Memory book, from cover to cover. I did a private session on it. And if you want that, well, go and get it. I'll give it to you. magneticmurraymethod.com/WR. It's not actually in this. Let me know that you were on this session, and I'll get you that. We went through it in detail, the Memory book, Tony Buzan. But we've got to keep them. We've got to go through their material again and again and again, because once is not enough. You don't go through books once if they're meaningful. And the same thing, James Schwartz, The Fire of Self-Knowledge. The Fire of Self-Knowledge is a lot to do with asking the right questions, creating your own proper filters, so you're ready every minute to filter, right? And catching yourself. So Ollie and I, he helped put the brakes on something I was getting caught up in, and it's not a bad thing, but I was starting to build up some blinders around something because I was feeding the algorithms through search. Now it was research to help you better, but the poison is so close. It's always so close. And luckily through discourse, through having good friends who are equally intelligent and more intelligent, and just really good people who are authentic and true, as Ollie Richards is, just like snapped me out of a little bit of a spell that was building. And so now I can do better around that area, which you'll hear about later, what all this is, because it's really, really important, and it's related to this topic that we're talking about now, the training of the algorithms and so forth. But there's some people who are speaking about it with a little bit of too hard of an edge, a little bit too much paranoia. And I don't want to develop that paranoia. Because if you saw earlier in today's session, that paranoia can go to a real bad place. Yeah, some great reading suggestions if you missed them. If you're joining us now, hit the thumbs up. Let me know where you are in the world, what you're doing, what you're thinking. If you have any questions, we're winding down here, but we'd love to answer anything that you have, or react, respond, and so forth. I want to thank Peggy for being here, Boo Boo for being here, Sandra for being here. All these wonderful people. Greg, great feedback today. J.A. was here briefly. Julie was here. Juan, really great interaction. Everybody, thank you so much. And thank you if you are part of that percent that never interacts. Thank you as well. I know what it's like to have been a student in the classroom. I didn't always want to interact myself, so par for the course. But there is something that opens up your brain if you get more interactive. And also, every little word grows the potential and the power of preserving our brains against poison on the pharmacy of the internet. So why do I call it the pharmacy of the internet? Well, Jacques Derrida, the French philosopher, who may be quite poisonous himself, some people think so, he talked about the origins of the Greek word pharmacon, from which we get pharmacy. And it's very important how specifically that he parses this out. Because a pharmacy is the thing where we gather together those things which are the cure that is also the poison, and the poison that is also the cure. And it's very important to word it that way. It's one of those, oh my goodness, with these big sentences that's like a roller coaster. Don't tell Google that we're using them because it won't send us traffic, because it might challenge you. Might challenge your ability to think. But the cure contain the cure that is the poison and the poison that is the cure. This is in Oedipus Rex. This is what the play Oedipus Rex is. It's the pharmacon principle in display, right? Because Oedipus is the guy who is hell-bent on figuring out the murderer, right? Why? Because things have poisoned the society. But what are those things that have poisoned the society, right? It's the plague, but what is the plague? What does it mean? Is it just some sickness? No, the play tells us very, very closely and carefully that the plague is not some random sickness. There have been medical developments. There have been technological developments. We hear of the ships that have been built that are taking people farther. And at the same time, those ships are bringing them faster to potentially attack the city of Thebes, right? So technology is the cure that poisons and the poisons that cures. That's the real plague. The plague is a metaphor for societal change, right? And so what ends up happening in Oedipus is that this societal change, being poisonous but also curative, is a changing of the guard. And Oedipus himself is part of the changing of the guard, right? Because he killed his old man, who was the king, right? And then he became the king. And so there's all these anxieties about when the new power comes in. Lots and lots of anxieties. And that's what Oedipus is really about. It's not about wanting to kill your father and sleep in with your mother. It's about the anxiety of change when the cure is the poison and the poison is the cure. Because new technology is curative. New technology is an advancement, but it's also got a poisonous element. So when those ships are moving faster, right? Well, yeah, we can move to other places faster, but the enemy can get to us faster as well, right? So what this all leads to, in Oedipus's case, is he's going to be the guy who saves all this, right? And the problem is that he's really good at it. He's a really good detective. He is the cure that will poison himself. And he is so poisonous that he has all the tools to cure himself through the investigative process. And the problem is he's just too good at it. And he winds up, at the end, figuring out that he's the pharmacon. He's it. Because he's the guy who's directing the ships to go further and faster. He's the guy who's not properly protecting Thebes. He's the source of the plague. So what is he going to do? He's going to purge the city of the plague. Now, poking out your eyes. Okay, not a great strategy at the best of times. But whatever, we can get deeper into that at some other time. But the whole point is, and by the way, if you ever see the movie Minority Report, it's Oedipus Rex. It's a modern version of Oedipus Rex. Down to the T, down to this problem of pharmacon. Really, really interesting movie. It's so much more interesting if you know that it's actually Oedipus, right? And he's a detective too, right? A police chief. Anyway, the whole thing is, and the pharmacon principle is that we're dealing with this right now. And it's given us iPhone neck. And what are we going to do about it? Well, each and every single one of us has to buck up and have the courage of Oedipus. See, the problem with the Oedipus story as it's taught in schools is they talk about how he was a coward and how that he had this fatal flaw and all this nonsense, Freudian gobbledygook about how he wanted to sleep with his mom and kill his father and yada, yada, yada. Like, I'm not going to throw out the Freud stuff, but it's not what it's really about. The problem is that actually Oedipus had the courage to figure out that he was the one who was responsible for the plague. He didn't do the right thing. What he should have done was to say, okay, now we know what the plague is. It's just a story, right? But now we know what the plague is, so what are we going to do? I got an idea. Why don't we figure out a policy where we can have better meetings with those ships that are coming in that are attacking our society and influencing our society in ways that we don't quite like? And why don't we think about how we could have some different interactions with them that might help us improve our country and improve theirs through trade instead of war? That would be maybe a better cure, right? And when it comes to iPhone neck, what we have to do is we have to say, okay, where are we in this? What can I do, right? You don't have to go to the Oracle. You don't have to do some crazy goat herd, ask the goat herd for advice. But what you do is you have to look at yourself and see yourself in the mix, in this pharmacon, this pharmacy of the internet, where there are many cures that are also the poison, and there are many poisons that also have the cure, right? And you have to see yourself in the mix, and you have to be the detective who figures out where responsibility really lies. Can you guess where that is? I'll leave you with that, folks. I really appreciate everybody who is here today, and I absolutely, absolutely hope that you will do what it takes to find out who's really responsible for the meaningless edutainment absurdly thriving online. And I sincerely hope and wish you all the best in your journey as a learner and as someone who wants to use memory techniques. Come visit me at magneticmemorymethod.com. Remember, we're going to study the techniques, we're going to implement the techniques, we're going to practice them with the information that actually improves our lives, not shopping lists, not meaningless things, but with languages so we can speak with each other better, with numbers so that we have better security in life and we don't have to spend so much time with passwords and so forth. And speaking of passwords, if you want the professionally edited version of the replay from yesterday and you want the actual recording itself all polished up so you can be there as Memorex, so to speak, then go to magneticmemorymethod.com/WR. If it's not the time for you, no problem. Come to magneticmemorymethod.com, take the free courses there. Really dive in, but please don't treat it like meat. I'm not about meaningless edutainment, absurdly thriving, but I need you to meet me halfway. I need you to meet me halfway and actually implement the techniques. Okay? So I hope you had a great one. Thank you, Sandra, for saying thank you. Thank you, Boo Boo the Bear, for saying thank you. Got to remember now that Boo Boo is a male. And I got to remember what am I trying to remember here? Tony Bartone. I got to remember Tony Bartone of the Australian Medical Association. Was that right? I lost page 1 again. Tony Bartone, Australian Medical Association. Thanks everybody again for being here. Have a great rest of your week, and until we have a chance to speak again, come visit me at magneticmemorymethod.com and keep yourself magnetic. Bye-bye.